win the Revolutionary War, they did go back home to Haiti and demanded their independence from France. And then here on our right-hand side, that church with the red doors, now that's the First African Baptist Church. And that church has the oldest African-American congregation in America, dated back to 1773. And it was the slaves out to the Branson Plantation that built that church. Now, during that time frame, those slaves wasn't allowed to take time off just to solely focus on building the church. So what they decided to do was they would work on the plantation all throughout the day, and in the evening time when they got off, they would hike down to this location, which was about 8 miles away, and they were building that church in the evening and at night by candlelight. Now, they finally completed the church in 1859. And that church is also a part of the Underground Railroad. So if you guys was to go back later on today and take a tour inside of that church, go down into the basement. In the basement, you're going to find holes that was left in the floorboards that the slaves used for ventilation purposes as they were passing through. Now, I've had a lot of guests that asked me, do we have any information about Harriet Tubman coming through this location? And we actually don't, but I will say that her husband is from Beaufort, South Carolina, which is about 45 minutes away from here. So I'm pretty sure she probably did come through here, but we just don't have those documents. Now, this location that we're getting ready to turn on, this is Broughton Street. And Broughton Street is named after Thomas Broughton. Now, Mr. Thomas Broughton, he was a royal governor from South Carolina. And Thomas Broughton and James Oglethorpe became really good friends during that time frame. And because of his contributions here, they named this location after him. Now, from the 1920s up until the 1960s, Broughton Street was the business district in this downtown area. But from the 1960s up until the early 1970s, it became the shopping district. And that's until the late 1970s rolled around and they built the Oglethorpe Mall. Now, when they built that mall, all of the gift shops, restaurants, and stores along Broughton Street went inside of the mall, and everything along Broughton shut completely down. There was absolutely nothing left here. But as you guys look around today, you see that Broughton Street has regained itself, and it's back to being our shopping district in this downtown area. And I will say, just to give you guys a heads up, later on, if you're planning on visiting the famous ice cream shop, Leopold's Ice Cream, that's straight ahead on Broughton Street on 5 here. Just stop number 10. That ice cream line sometimes is ridiculous. I've seen people stand in that ice cream line for about 2 hours. So just to give you a heads up. So you don't want to stand in that line, or just be well prepared before you get there. Now, as we turn off from Broughton Street, the next square that we're going to be entering is Telfair Square. Now, Telfair Square was first laid back in 1733. And when it was laid during that time frame, it wasn't called Telfair Square. It was actually called St. James Square. And St. James Square during that time was the elite of Savannah. This is where they lived at. But in the mid-1800s, it changed from St. James Square to Telfair Square in honor of Edward Telfair. And Mr. Edward Telfair, he was one of our governors here during that time. And then as we enter the square, coming up on our right-hand side, you're going to see a beautiful mustard-colored mansion. Now, that mansion was built for Alexander Telfair. And Alexander, he was Edward's son. Alexander had William J. build this mansion. Now, Mr. Williams started on the mansion in 1818. He completed this mansion in 1819 for the Telfair family. And 2 of those statues are standing in front of that mansion. They have some really important names. You guys know some individuals that's named after them. They're called the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, Alexander, he passed that mansion on to his sister Mary Telfair, and Mary wanted the mansion to become a public art museum, so that was the first public art museum that opened in the Southeast in the mid-1800s. And then here on our right-hand side, this is Trinity United Methodist Church. Now, this is the mother church of Methodism. And then as we exit the square, here on our right-hand side is the beautiful Jepson Center. Now, the Jepson Center is just an extension of the Telfair Arts and Science Museum behind us. They actually started running out of space back there, so they built this location as an extension in 2006. And on the inside, you're going to find over 14,000 square feet of fine arts and exhibits. And on the second floor, they have a children's museum. It's called the Art Museum. And inside of the Art Museum, they have this huge magnetic wall that they will allow you in, and you can create your own artwork on that wall. So if that is something you guys are into, you can check that out before leaving. Now, do you guys remember that awesome movie that we had filmed here called Forrest Gump? Starring Tom Hanks? Yeah, one of my favorites. I'm going to show you guys where the opening scene of that movie was filmed at here. And speaking of Tom Hanks, he was here a few months ago. He hopped on one of our trolleys and took a tour. Oh. Yeah, it was really cool. It wasn't my trolley, thank goodness, because I tell everyone that would have been the end of our tour. Hanging out with Tom Hanks for the looking to your left-hand side and look up, you're going to see that huge steeple that's on top of the Presbyterian Church here. Now that's the steeple that was in the beginning of the movie Forrest Gump, when the fella floated down and landed by Forrest's feet, and he was telling everyone that life was like a box of chocolates. Yeah, you never know what you're going to get. Now this is Orleans Square that we're entering, and Orleans Square is named after the Battle of New Orleans. Now, in the center of Orleans Square, that's our beautiful German fountain, and that fountain is one of the last fountains that was placed here in Savannah, dating back to 1989, in honor of those German immigrants that arrived shortly after James Oglethorpe and the early settlers arrived back in 1733. And then as we exit the square, coming up on our left-hand side is a beautiful Greek revival home. That home is called the Harper Folk House. Now, before you guys check out the Harper Folk House, I want you to look to your left in front of the home. You're going to see a stepping stone with the horse's head right beside it. Now, those are the stones that they once used back in the day before the roads was paved. They would walk the horses over to that location, and you would use that stone just to give you a boost to hop on the horse's back. Yeah, so you'll find a lot of those stones in front of the houses in this downtown area. Now, as I said, this is the Harper Folk House, and this home was built in 1843 for Mr. Stephen Gardner, but it changed owners 4 times. The 4th person that purchased this home was a young lady by the name of Alita Harper Folk, and she purchased this home at an auction for $9,000. She deeded the home to the Society of Cincinnati, but it was never be sold again because she felt the inside of this home was way too beautiful for anyone to rearrange or change anything. Typical female. So they can't change anything or sell it, but you can take a tour on the inside to see how she left it. And I always tell everyone, if they was going to sell it again, it will not be for $9,000. And then as we cross over, you look to your left. This is the cast iron fence of presidents and poets. Now the faces on the front of that fence, they're all different faces of famous poets and presidents. And it's connected to the Baptist House here on our left, which was built in 1858. But if you guys look around this location right now, as we pass through, you see a lot of ironwork. Well, that's because back in the 1800s here, iron was a sign of wealth. It was said that the more iron you had around your home, the wealthier you were during that time frame. Now, this next square we're entering, this is Chippewa Square. And Chippewa Square is named after the Battle of Chippewa, and in the center of Chippewa Square, here on our left-hand side, is our very own founder, the statue of Mr. James Edward Oglethorpe. And that statue was created by Mr. Daniel Chester French and Henry Bacon. And this is the square where they filmed Forrest Gump, where he was sitting on that bench.